There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, as always, my co-host and lovable companion, Mr. Timothy Dennis. Good evening, Tim.
Hey, hey.
Welcome back to the second part of the show. This evening, we've got Dr. Ron Milione is joining us, and for any of you that are fans of the TV show Ghost Hunters, you recognize Ron as the proverbial Q of the TAPS team. He's the gadget man, comes up with all the cool stuff that they use on the show. And Ron is on to talk to us a little bit about TAPS, his experience with the paranormal, and some amazing experiments that he's working on right now. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys, thanks. How you doing, Dave and Tim?
Doing great. Thanks a lot for joining us here this evening. So, now, Ron, you've been, I had the chance, I've met you out at the Penn State conferences. Great guy, really very cordial, very nice guy. You've been on the TV show Ghost Hunters. You do, give us a little background on you and your technical expertise. You're Dr. Ron Milione. What exactly are you a scientist of? What have you worked on, and what do you do for the TAPS team?
Oh, okay, great. Let me wind back the clock all the way back.
Wow, he can even wind back the clock, Tim.
That's impressive.
Very cool.
Way back then when I was trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Sometimes I still figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I was really inquisitive about a lot of stuff that I took apart, put it together as I was growing up, and then I decided to go into... I really like electronics because I thought that's the most mystifying of all things out there. I mean, I still like, cars and all that stuff and hot rods, but the electronics was always a mystery or mystify me because it's kind of like a black magic. How's this stuff work? You turn it on and something comes out. So when I was really small, my father introduced me to like these, receivers and stuff, and there were a thing called tubes. They would glow in the dark. That's how far back I'm going. So I still have some of these classic things in the garage. They still kind of work. And we're saying, wow, you turn this thing on, and these things glow, and something happens. In other words, you receive some signal. I'm going, this is sick. I mean, how's this whole thing get together?
Right.
So that's how I really got intrigued into this this whole mystery. I've said, how's this stuff, this stuff gets through the air. You don't see it, you don't feel it, you don't touch it, Right. And then you get this information. I said, this is great, man. There's got to be some mystery or something to it. So that's where I got into the field of electronics, trying to get my hand around it and see how this stuff works. I mean, some of it took a number of times to go over it to comprehend because it's some of the stuff is really out there, and finally kind of made sense piece by piece. And I'm going, okay, it still mystifies me today because. Again, stuff you don't see or hear or touch or feel, it's still fascinating, even though it may be pretty trivial to people. Like, oh, you just turn on your satellite receiver and you get, Howard Stern or something.
Howard who? I'm sorry, we're not familiar with him. So that's how you kind of got involved with the electronics part of things.
And, that's how I get involved with it. And then from there, I always kind of like trying to tinker with something, put something together, and see if it works, and playing around with different systems, and to say this is really cool stuff. And of course, a lot of smoke accident stuff that blew up that was really cool.
Yeah, that's the best part always.
That's always the best part because
Exactly.
That's a great way to learn. Oh, the capacitor goes in this way because I have the plus going to the negative and the negative going to the plus.
Yeah, not a good connection there, Ron.
No, man.
So now, how about your interest in the paranormal? Is that something that you really had, or were you just approached by the ghost hunters to help them with the equipment that they use so that they know what they're doing and make the best use of it?
No, way back before. I mean, I always was fascinated with with ghosts and what's behind that, if there's anything behind that. Now, my real love and interest, and still to this day, I mean, I still got like a 50% half of me, into this other side is I was always fascinated by this UFO stuff. And when I was a kid and when I was in high school, and that's when I was getting into electronics, UFOs always fascinated me because it was a lot more, especially when I was much younger, when you go back then, a lot more UFO stuff out in the press. And I'm going, what is this stuff,
Sure.
So you get all these people looking at this stuff, and so of course half of them might be crackpots, but the other half are like pretty professional, legitimate people, scientists, astronauts, pilots.
Right.
They said I said if they're pilots and they work for the Air Force, they said they got to know a lot more inside information because they got friends that work at different places, and they'll tell them, yeah, we're working on this new stealth plane or this new type of prototype. I mean, eventually we'll get leaked within their group, and they
Sure.
can kind of say, all right, that makes sense. But you got all these, top ace pilots in the Air Force, and they go, hey, what's this flying thing next to me that's going at 3,000 miles an hour?
Right.
And so that's where I really started with the paranormal stuff. I was really into this UFO stuff, and it's still to this day. It's still, in my mind. There's got to be some connection to which I want to try to figure out.
Very cool. So how did you get tied up with the guys from the Ghost Hunters TV show?
Well, way back when they first started the first release of season 1.
Right.
It's kind of like like their kind of pilot, just coming out. And I was at this college. I was teaching some communication course, just locally here where I am. And I was catching the last 10 minutes of this here, and I'm catching Grant and Jason, and I'm going, oh, wow. And then all of a sudden a light bulb went on me, and I said, I bet you, I said, there's probably stuff in there that there's tools that's not available off the shelf that it could fit into what they're doing. In other words, into ghost hunting.
Right.
So then I looked into it, and I go, all right, I got, camera, tape recorder, and there's a dozen other basic tools, and I'm going, okay. I said, there's probably a lot of holes in here. And I'm looking, and I'm a real, electromagnetics freak, or, electromagnetics. It was really cool when I was in grad school.
Sure.
So I knew a lot of that was focused around electromagnetics, and I go, oh, okay. So let me look into it. So I typed off an email to the guys, and said, and Jason actually called back that next day and says, Ron, if you got stuff that we could really use and utilize, that's beyond what our basic toolkit, I want to definitely see you and talk to you, and let's definitely get together on it.
Very cool.
So then that kind of lit the fire, and my mind just started to go like a million miles an hour and say, okay, well, let me see what I could play with around first. And then we had a couple meetings by phone and then by email and stuff. And that's when they were just starting to go to the Penn State conference, the first one there. When the show just got the first show.
Right.
And I came up with a rough draft prototype of some other form of a EMF detector pretty quickly, and sent it off to them. And they said, "This is great, man! Oh, we got to see this in person." And they actually showed some pictures of that at Penn State, and people going, "Oh yeah, that's cool with lights and this different lights."
Sure.
And, so then I went up there when I came back, and I had the unit kind of just finished, and it kind of worked. Showed them, and they were just ecstatic, and that's how the relationship began.
Very cool. So you've with the type of equipment that you're building, though. So what are you doing? You're trying to link into the EMF fields of what is believed to be spirits manifesting themselves. Yeah.
In other words, kind of an improvement of what's out there. I mean, there's some really great tools out there. I mean, and the thing that I was looking at also, which is like they were looking at a LCD display, that was a pretty good unit. I'm not knocking the unit at all. The unit's great. But I'm saying, well, it's not practical if you're in a real dark. You need a second hand for a flashlight. And I said, it's normally not good to have two hands tied up, especially if you're in an abandoned building.
Right, exactly.
Just in case you need to grab on before you fall off.
Right.
and I said, it's much more strenuous, and you're not focusing. And I said, here's kind of a cosmetic front end improvement already. In other words, maybe make something glow in the dark that shows them there's some signal increase. Means let's light up more lights on the device, and they could instantaneously see that they're tracking something, and plus they could have a free hand, and plus they don't have to stop and look and say, I got a 0.2, a 0.6. It's kind of like now you don't have to really take a second step.
Right.
So that was kind of like an improvement in the EMF for those guys that wanted to get real quick, fast results, and then focus on what entity may be in the presence of a room.
Now, with the equipment that you're working on and perfecting right now, do you feel that you're making some strides in making contact or finding the right spectrum to locate spirits?
Still really investigating that. But what's been improved since say the last 2 years, I think, is a significant milestone. Is what's interesting is all the groups. Like I just came back from the Mid-South Paranormal Conference,
right,
out there. And I introduced this new system, and they just were crazy. They said, "This is great." What happens was with that particular tool, for example, if you're going around, sweeping, I call it sweeping an establishment, you really don't. There's no way to collect this, have the data, because you're just running from one location to the other, and you're looking for say peaks,
right,
EMF signal peaks, and go, okay, I got something right here, as typically as they do on Ghost Hunters, with Brian or Steve. So I said, wouldn't it be great if you could record all that movement and then later review it? And then I said, there's plenty of, storage, micro storage systems out there that's on a real small scale. I said, let's build a system that you could probably store the data, and then even though you still got live readings, but you could go back later and then check it out on a program and go, okay, here's my peaks, here's my valleys, and here's my graph. So what I came up with is an enhanced version of this EMF storage detection system. So now you store all the EMF signals, and later on you could just input it through a computer and then really massage the data and see. This would happen in cell block 12 at Eastern State Penitentiary on the night of September 29th, whatever. And
okay,
you could go back and you could see it. So now, because otherwise you're going to forget. There's no way, you're just running around and you spend 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, you go, oh, what was that? Was that corner of the room or the other corner that got the high peak?
Sure.
So what it does a timestamp, exact timestamp, and records the exact, the high signal, an average of the signals, X, Y, and Z, because I massage all three axes. And that's just one example of that's kind of like the next major milestone generation leap of this system.
Now is that something that you have available for other paranormal groups that are looking for equipment like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to have it available for 07, January 07, to be available.
And now, how can people order that? Are they going to be able to get it through electronic stores, or are you going to have it available through a site?
It's going to be probably available through a site. Electronic stores, I may see down the line, but right now I'd rather have it to a site where all the groups could just go more like kind of vertically tuned to the paranormal guys out there.
Okay.
But
I would say that'd probably be a hot mover for you. Now, do you know how big of a piece of equipment are you talking about?
Let's see, if you got a regular laptop, like say a power supply for a laptop,
sure,
that's kind of like almost like a brick, small brick.
Right.
It's about that size.
Okay. So is that something that you carry along with you, or is it something that's radioing back to a broadcast unit, or what exactly?
No, it's portable, carry with you. You could do two things to it. If you're in a room and you really think there's activity going around, but I call it static. In other words, you want to put a static EMF system there and walk away and come back, say, 15 minutes later.
Right.
You could set up a laptop and you connect it with a serial cable, USB cable, right into the device. Let the device run, and it will collect all the localized EMF say signals to the laptop. You come back 10 minutes later. Hopefully, it's still in one piece.
Right.
That the entity didn't step on it, and then you could just save the data. The other thing is you just put it in your pocket and you walk down and way down the hallways of Waverly Hills somewhere.
Sure.
And you just go into room 52 or something.
Now, have you been able to shield this type of unit from different electronic sources so that you're not always just picking up every remote control in your pocket for your keys or your car, or picking up the camera EMF or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have it pretty well inside the case. I have a decent kind of a good grounding plane, which means it tries to cause less. I mean, it's still going to. It's still designed to pick up and it's very sensitive to EMF, electromagnetic radiation. But it's kind of like it's got its shielding. It's got much more electronic component shielding. Where it's I put extra filtering. We call these little capacitors I put into the system that really take out any noise. Where it's power noise and stuff.
Sure.
In other words, even though it's supplied by little DC battery stuff, what happens if you got real bad we call coupling? You could get electrical noise that could cause false positive to your computer, the sensor that's picking up that EMF stuff. So on an electronic design level, I put a lot more 1% tolerance components and real tight and more filtering for the voltage supplies, which plain in English means there's a lot of extra stuff in the unit to make it really, really sensitive, but also
good.
reject
Extra stuff. Extra stuff. That's good. Now, I want to ask you real quickly before we go to a break here. Do you believe, is there a certain light spectrum or sound wave spectrum that you think that spirits are able to access a lot more easily than the light form that we see and the sounds that we're able to hear?
Oh, absolutely. That's a part of a lot of my lecture and presentation, where there is some spectrum that they definitely kind of, let's say that's their general meeting room, where if they want to communicate. And I believe that most of the EVP stuff and also that communication, say, portal, sits way up there in the ultrasonic frequency range, so which is above our hearing. What put a light bulb on me one day was, you're watching one of these shows, and all of a sudden you ever see like the dog, all of a sudden his ears go up?
Right.
And I'm going, oh, what does the dog have that we don't have?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
He has super high frequency hearing. So what I did and made is, and we tested it out actually over the weekend out there in the Mid-South Paranormal Conference, was a EVP listener system. So in other words, it looks like a big ear, and the front end of that system is all tuned to ultrasonic frequencies. So what it's supposed to do is you could aim this unit, walk around, say, an investigation, a building under suspicion that has paranormal activity,
right,
and you could try to capture in real time maybe an EVP. And what happens, it goes from ultrasonic way up there. You could change that range, that window range, and it'll step it down to our human audible frequency wavelength, range, up to 18,000 hertz. So in other words, if someone's trying to communicate with us, real time, you might hear it because it's down to what we hear. And then there's also, at the same time, you could take the output and have a little digital recorder in your pocket and plug a little mini cable in there, so it records what you hear besides you just saying, hey, Steve, or hey, whatever.
Right.
I thought I heard, Aunt Sally down the hallway.
Now, is that a unit that you already have built, or one that you're working?
Yeah, have it built. We demonstrated over the conference. It's been kicked around, the tie's been kicked around. We took it at 2 different places over the weekend, and some people thought they heard some voices. I mean, this is what they told me. I even left it to the local Louisiana Ghost Hunter Society to take a look at it and try it, and they thought it was like the best thing since sliced bread.
Awesome.
So I said, "Oh, cool, man! I mean, something works. It looks like a big X-ray. Ray gun. Looks like a big ray gun."
Oh,
and
sure.
you wear these headphones. Yeah, it's pretty slick. But it's light. It's portable. I got it into a nice handheld housing.
Sure. So it's light, portable, easy to do, and will be an affordable unit for people too, I would guess then.
Yes. That's the whole thing. I mean, it's not going to be $10, but it's going to be, say less than $200. It's somewhere, but it's one of a kind, like really cool unit. And it took me, this is almost like 9 months of R&D to finally get this thing from a concept, prototype, debugging to an actual product.
Sure.
So it took quite a long time this year. But I think that was like the most major milestone as far as paranormal tools, because I started running out of ideas. I really, you can't just come up with stuff every other day.
Right.
It's like, man, that's, I can't think of anything else right now. Let me shut my mind down for 6 months.
Well, for those of you that are just tuning in, you're listening to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. Our guest is Dr. Ron Milione. He is the technical expert for the TV show Ghost Hunters, helping with all of their equipment. He is a scientist, does quite a bit, and we've got some fascinating different experiments that he's been working on lately that we're going to talk about when we come back after this.
The New York Times has raved about the show. The Star Tribune says it's paranormally funny. And the Biscayne Bugle said, how could they put this crap on the air and live with themselves?
I am so sorry for everything that has happened. Because in spite of what Mike says now, it is my fault. Because it was my project. Everything had to be my way. And this is where we've ended up.
Stay tuned. There's more to come from the Darkness on the Edge of Town.
This is Dave Schrader from the Darkness on the Edge of Town radio show. Each week, we delve into the web of the unknown and deal with a lot of scary subjects. But nothing makes my blood run colder or scares me more than dealing with technology. That's why we turn to the experts when we wanted our website for the show set up and maintained. In the studio with me is Don Raleigh, owner of Evolve Systems. Don and his exceptional staff were easy to work with and made setting up our site a breeze. Don, what is it that sets you apart from other web developers?
Well, Dave, we make your business visions come to life by creating, maintaining, and hosting all of your internet needs. We do this by listening to our clients. We offer programs and price plans to fit any budget. And Dave, I mean any budget. Call us at 651-628-4000 and put us to work for you.
Call Don at Evolve Systems, 651-628-4000. I did, and I couldn't be happier with the results.
That's because we take the ugh out of technology, Dave. Call us today at 651-628-4000 or visit us on the web at www.evolve-systems.com, serving the entire United States. That's Evolve Systems, helping you to manage change. Cheers.
It looks good at National Run. Roger.
Okay, each of you youngins take a gun, a beer, and some smokes.
Throttle circuit breakers in. We have separation. Inboard and outboard are on. We're coming forward with the side stick. Looks good. Roger. I've got a blowout. Neighbor 3. Get your pitch to 0. Pitches out. I can't hold altitude. Correction. Alpha hold is on. Trip selectors emergency. Flight column. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Oh my God! They killed
Dave.
you bastard!
Dave Schrader, paranormal host.
A man barely alive. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic
Paranormal host. Dave Schrader
will be that man. Better than he was before.
What is it that makes you set...
Better, stronger, faster.
Run, Forrest, run! Run, Forrest!
Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town with Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis.
Good evening and welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. Our guest this evening is Dr. Ron Milione, and he is the technical expert that works along with the Ghost Hunters, TAPS crew from the Sci-Fi Channel. And he does amazing different equipment, as we were just talking about. He's got a piece of equipment that's actually going to help capture EVPs in real time so that you can hear them and record them at the same time, that brings the sound frequencies into our audible range. He's also got other EMF detectors that he's been working on, different ideas. But the thing that really intrigued us about bringing him on the show tonight is talking to him about an experiment that he's working on right now that has to do with the Philadelphia experiment. And Tim's going to be talking a little bit more. I know you love when Tim chimes in, ladies and gentlemen, so he's going to be talking a little bit more. He's very fascinated by the whole Philadelphia experiment deal. I'm a little bit of a rube. I know a little bit about the Philadelphia experiment, but I'm more familiar with the Michael Pare 1980s movie on the subject, so I'm sure that that's not all the truth. So we're going to let Dr. Ron here and Tim discuss a little bit more with the Philadelphia experiment. Maybe you could start us off, Ron, telling us, give us some history about the Philadelphia experiment, and then we'll let you and Tim take over.
Oh, okay, great. Back in the 40s, when we were involved with the height of the war, World War II, the Germans were really taking advantage of our surface, in other words, that's our vessels, with mines, undetectable mines, but would actually explode from magnetic interference. So every single vessel out there, especially those iron, I call them those iron horses back then, our Navy ships, has a tremendous magnetic footprint because of all the navigation equipment and the generators. I mean, if you ever go down on one of those ships and you just go below deck, I mean, it's an incredible city of conduits, of miles and miles of copper and stuff. So that thing gives out a tremendous, like a magnetic footprint as it's going in the water. And if that feels so strong enough that when it hits a mine, especially a magnetic trigger mine, which the Germans were great at, you got real large collateral damage, and that's it. And the ship is gone, and loss of life, and you got that's a real crippling to our fleet. So at the same time, they had a few other guys that was real deep drenched into some atomic research, which was the Manhattan Project. Now, with this magnetic mine problem, and the Germans were really sophisticated, really good on some of their surveillance radars, that they came out with another project called Project Rainbow. Now, Project Rainbow's job was to let's reduce this collateral damage. Let's see how we could avoid these magnetic mines. And at the same time, let's see if we could also reduce the radar interception of our ships. So Project Rainbow was formed, and they said, you guys need to get on this and work on this as soon as possible. and that's what happened. So you got two parallel teams running, Manhattan Project on one end, and you got Project Rainbow. Now, Project Rainbow was based out of the Philadelphia Navy Shipyard's main headquarters there because a bulk of some of the smaller, you could call it vessels, the frigate stuff, was added. It was available. I mean, Norfolk is a main location, which they do some transportation of some of the Navy stuff from Norfolk to Philadelphia's Navy Yard, and of course the other side was San Diego. San Diego is the other big Navy location. Mm-hmm. Since time was essence, and really they had to get the best, some of the leading, couple of bleeding edge engineers and some scientists to work on this problem, and that's what they started to do. So they started to say, all right, let's see how we could either reduce the magnetic footprint, B, let's see if we could actually make it invisible to radar. That's exactly what they were going to do, and it will give us an advantage. So that's where they started to come up with, okay, how do we reduce the magnetic residue of the ship to a point where we don't trigger any of these magnetic bombs down there or magnetic mines.
So they were actually, with this experiment, to try to avoid detection. What were they hoping to do, or what was it that they were setting out to accomplish? Was it bending light? Was it refracting the signal from sonar, or what was it?
Yeah, because when you're dealing with surface to surface, they're actually that's more line of sight, radar interrogation. So let's say what they wanted to try to do is, if there's a way they could actually also either jam or kind of bubble the X-band signal coming in, which means that they don't get actually a return. They'll get like a reflection, so they can't really get an accurate pinpoint of that target's location. Or it was really too complicated to start they thought of a RAM system, radar absorbing material. So it's better off either deflecting or kind of like we call it shifting, signal shifting or phase shifting the radar signal. So they figured that if you generated a high enough counter EMF magnetic bubble, that you could kind of neutralize the X-band signal coming in from the enemy. So that was the theory. So on the blackboard because they had no whiteboard back then, on the blackboard they get their chalk out and they say, all right, let's see how we could equate and build a system up. And the first thing that comes into mind back then is let's create a degaussing system. So a degaussing system's primary design and function is to reduce any magnetic fields out there. So if we make this ship a kind of a big degaussing boat, that should help reduce the magnetic footprint way down so we could solve the magnetic mine problem. And then we could do is if we turn on some directional generators, high directional generators of X amount of megawatts, which is a total of 6 megawatts of power, then we could act as this big magnetic jamming or deflection. So when I'm shooting the radar at you, it gets bounced off. Just think of a big plastic bottle, and your ship is inside that plastic bottle, right? Oh, as a matter of fact, what's a great thing I could direct this to? Remember the old classic War of the Worlds?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they get the aliens, they're flying, and all of a sudden they create this bubble around it, and they're trying to attack the alien spaceship, and it just reflects off.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly the same concept they were trying to accomplish back in the 40s with the radar. So you create this massive magnetic bubble around it, so when the radar hits it, it just bounces any other direction, and it doesn't come back on the return correctly. So they really don't know where you are, even though you're at, let's say, 32 degrees west, 45 degrees north. You're absolutely somewhere else. So long as you they get back either no or very wrong direction, you got the advantage. So you could come up, trying secretly to come up on your enemy and then blow them out of the water. So that's what they're trying to do. Now, what's interesting about the whole story, what people really don't realize, and between the lines here, is you don't have much time to prototype.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you don't have I have 8-9 months playing around with that EVP listener, back and forth, works, it doesn't work. Here they're against time. Like, you guys need to get this thing done within 1 or 2 weeks. We need answers. Coming down from the brass and the Pentagon. So they got to kind of say, all right, in theory, I think everything should work, and they just get the guys wrapping the wires all around the ships. On this ship, the USS Elbridge, known as DE-173. That was the actual.
Let me ask you, Ron. Now, is this all speculative, or is this a for sure experiment that was taking place?
No, this is a for sure experiment. I'm telling you some of the real deal here, some good inside information. This is the real deal.
Well, the reason I ask is because so many people have seen it in the movies and heard about it in X-Files and TV. Sometimes you lose perspective of what's a real story, and what's disinformation. Did the government leak this to make us believe this was going on and it actually wasn't? But there is proof that there was a Philadelphia or Project Rainbow, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's Hollywood for you. I mean, you have to put some sexiness to it,
sure.
Excitement. I mean, if you put if you just talk about all, facts and, theories and this and that, people go, oh my God, what am I attending school again? Shut this guy off. So you got to have some kind of, you got to have the entertainment side of it.
So
this is a real deal.
So they've lined up the ship, right? They've lined up the ship with all these wires, and what is it like? They've grid. Was it almost like wrapping it like in a grid of wires so that they can?
Yeah. In other words, you create this first degaussing kind of at the bow of the ship. Another it's like a big coil, like an iron electromagnetic iron core coil.
Okay.
And then you put it at the stern, which is the rear of the ship. And then what you do is now we're trying to reduce reduce the magnetic field. On top, on the deck, you have these large generators that put out this almost high power directional beam, RF beam, radio frequency beam, where when you try to it kind of what's supposed to do is kind of neutralize or kind of jam the incoming signal, just like on like a radar detector. They do make radar jams to jam or counterbalance the the source radar. So then you get false readings. In other words, the patrolman gets either 0 miles an hour or this guy's doing 800 miles an hour, but
right.
he can't pinpoint exactly what you're doing.
Sure.
So this is the deal. That was a real deal there in Project Rainbow, and that's what they needed to accomplish.
So what was the effects? What happened when they ran this experiment then?
Now, like I said, they don't have time to rehearse and have
right.
Get everything working. And let's just start. Let's just start turning on. Of course, they had small systems of small checks. They would turn it on. Got power here. Got power there. We don't have a short here. Everything was checks and balances. But when you it's kind of like if you turn on. This device is called a variac. In other words, if you plug this thing into your wall, and then you take, say, some other device and plug it into the variac, you start at 0, and you could go up to 10, and the thing will start maybe to light up a little bit. So you know that, okay, there's no smoke, things are working, you're not giving it full 120, you're just slightly going up, enough where you're just starting to, get the electrons flowing on the other end. So that's what they were doing. They were doing checks and balances. Now, when they finally did the real test, like, all right, today, guys, Tuesday, we're going to turn it on, and let's give it a full test. Again, no time for rehearsal because every minute was critical to the war to get results.
Right.
When they turned that thing fully on, what's interesting, what was supposedly really interesting was that when you have so much RF going on, you have so much hydrogen atoms are right in the atmosphere there. So the hydrogen starts to really oscillate. And what you think the ship is laying on a salt solution, right? It's in the water.
Oh, sure.
And salt is a great conductor of any type of, it's a great electrical conductor. It's not an insulator. I mean, it's a fantastic conductor. And you got the sodium and the chloride atoms. Excuse me. They track real quick. Now, if you got hydrogen, you got sodium, you got chloride, and you got all the moisture molecules in the air, turn everything on with such high power. What happens? The hydrogen ions were breaking down when they call free radicals, and in other words, they try to unite with the other atoms that's just around, which was the chloride. And what happens? You got gas such as hydrogen chloride combination now, and therefore, what happens to the visible spectrum? You actually create a gas cloud, which did happen, and that's where you get as far as how that falls into what you and I see from the dock is like a big green mist cloud. Like, what's this? And they didn't realize that when you're talking 6 megawatts of power being transmitted, and all the hydrogen right around there from the RF electromagnetic, and you have the degaussing started. The hydrogen acts as kind of like a little springboard to get down to and you get the salt water. You create like hydrogen chloride stuff.
Sure.
And
so what was this green fog doing? I mean, was it deadly? Was it explosive? Was it poison?
Yeah, it was toxic, but it wasn't really critical. But it was just to a point where it was causing all types skin irritations. And what happens when you get the type of gas and skin irritations, and when you deal with RF, it actually starts to fuse your skin to whatever you come in contact. Now the whole ship is actually engaged in its power, and if you start rubbing against the metal, now the metal, don't forget, is part of the ship, and the ship is grounded in the salt water. And then if you get the RF to you, it goes through your skin to the ship's side, the floor or whatever, you become part of that path, that short circuit path. And at that point, who knows what happens when you're dealing with so many millions of watts of power, and this is the numbers that we got.
So this is where it came through that people are stuck halfway in and out of the decks and through the walls. Okay.
Yep.
And is that because they believe that they were moving the molecules and you were actually phasing through these things or shifting through them?
Yeah, you're you're becoming like a jellification process of one material to the other. That with the right frequency, the right amplitude, in other words, the right power, the chemistry balance, and you put it all together, all unpredictable things can happen, and that's what's happened. Don't forget, we're just a water-based kind of framework, human person here, and it's real easy. I mean, it's real easy for to get chemical breakdown in our body, especially when you're dealing with this other external stuff.
Well, theoretically, then, if we can vibrate a wall quick enough, can't we pass through it easily?
Oh, theoretically, you can. You absolutely can. If you get the right combinations, like I said, the frequency, amplitude, power, environment, if all those things are collectively correct, in phase at the same time, in other words, synchronous, then that's possible. And you just take, one atom joining the other atom. I mean, normally, they have it's the natural, the bonding, all that electron bonding.
Sure.
So if you force the electron bonding and go beyond its normal bonding methods under room environment conditions, then you see all hell breaks loose. Like you take water, you leave it, nothing happens. But I mean, if you boil it and you see how violent it gets, and all of a sudden turns into vapor real quick.
Right.
It still originally was H2O. Now it's in a different state. So by applying some tremendous external force. So with those guys, this external RF force, and I'm telling you, I got RF burns in the past. I mean, 100 watts, 50 watts, and that thing burns. I'm talking just room temperature because of the salt on my skin. Wow. And it feels like someone's taking like a razor and it's like going against your skin, real sharp. And that's how an RF burn feels. It's nasty. It's not nice.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ron. Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll finish up a little bit more about this, and then find out the experiment that you're doing and what you're hoping to accomplish with this experiment. You're listening to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. Our guest this evening is Dr. Ron Milione. We're talking about the Philadelphia experiment, and an experiment that Ron is beginning to run right now as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
I am Greenblock 6, and when I am in your galaxy, I listen to Dave and Tim on the Darkness on the Edge of Town.
Leave me alone! Do you have ghosts? Do you have dreams? Do you have an interest in the unknown? Want to know more about the paranormal? Come and join us in Para Investigators, the 24/7 online paranormal chat. Visit us today at infinityparanormal.com and tell us what's been keeping you up in the dark.
If you bleed from the ears while listening to Leo Sayer records, would it qualify as a paranormal experience? I thought so. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town. Ooh, that hurts.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. We hope you're having a healthy, happy, safe October. Remember, Halloween's coming up. Be safe out there with the kids. Make sure to check out. There's a lot of really great little deals that are going on right now. You can actually take your kids safely trick-or-treating in the malls, apartment complexes, other great places. So please be out there and be safe and be with your kids. It's a great time of year for that. We're talking to Dr. Ron Milione, and he's on the show with us this evening. He's a member of TAPS from the Ghost Hunters TV show on Sci-Fi Channel. He's their resident technical expert. He helps with a lot of the equipment, and he's kind of breaking some new ground with equipment that he's creating. He's also working on his own version of the Philadelphia experiment, and he's been discussing with us the original Philadelphia experiment. Tim, I know you had a couple questions for Dr. Milione. I'll shut up and let you guys go.
Well, Ron, one of the questions I had, we were talking in the previous segment about the effect of people fusing into the actual ship during the experiment. And we'd mentioned the green toxic fog that was created by the actual experiment. My question is, there were other such effects as mental illness, schizophrenia, and also there is, I think just about everybody aboard the ship reported having some type of nausea. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, first of all, let's go to the mental illness, schizophrenia part. Is it just the severity of the experiment and the effect it had on the body that would change like a chemical balance in the brain that would make someone just flip out?
The military a while ago was doing some experiments where at certain frequencies and amplitude, you could definitely do some kind of, we call change pattern in the way the neurons work in in someone in the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
So they were doing stuff at a few years ago. Late 80s and early 90s on that. But there's been definitely some speculation on that certain frequencies at a certain amplitude you can actually cause some I call it neuron distortions. So depending on where the person was exposed at the moment of time, those sailors, and depending on their chemistry of the brain hemisphere, absolutely you could have some can be severely affected, some might have minor effects, or some just basically some sailors themselves, depending on their mental state of affairs. In other words, they're able to handle extreme conditions. Weren't able to handle it at that moment in time, and obviously, had nervous breakdown.
Well, they've had actual experiments, right, with the electronic magnetic fields when they've messed with, like, the pituitary gland, isn't it, in the brain, or the pituitary, some part of the brain where they're actually stimulating it, and it causes hallucinations and causes mental disturbances, right? Is that what you're?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that basically what this was doing? Was just on a super magnified scale, so
yes,
it might have left long-term effects then to people instead of just the temporary disturbance of the EMF.
Yep, and that's where you guys were always hear about this mind control experiments and stuff. That's exactly what would be the case, and especially if you're stepping up something that's in the magnitude of megawatts that they were outputting, which is just an incredible amount of power, and normally under laboratory conditions, I mean, they don't even have animals subjected to something like that. You're talking 6 megawatts of power when they generate it.
So let me ask you this, Ron. So we've got mental illness happening, we've got nausea happening, which I'm guessing is probably due to the transition from one level of vibration to another. Is that the main reason for it?
When you if you have a direct contact with frequency RF and at a high power rate, it actually starts to oscillate, or actually starts to vibrate your water molecules in the body. So that's where the nausea comes in. So if you're violently changing or kind of boiling the water molecules in your body, which basically is what giving your organs, it's life and stuff. That's where all of a sudden you get this tremendous effects such as nausea, vomiting, and stuff, because you're just exciting the water molecules in your own body when you're exposed to this RF field. Anywhere you go, I mean, if you go near, for example, any regular commercial radar, for example, they do not step directly in front of the radar, especially on Navy ships. There's a whole man's-off safety precaution. And this, we're talking 6, 10, 20, 50 kilowatts of power, say 50,000 watts of radar power. Here they were generating 6 million, like I kept repeating, but it's just mind-boggling the amount of power that they were trying to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just imagine it's almost like putting yourself in a microwave oven, put it on super high. In other words, like how you put it in for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like just take the 30 seconds and take that energy and just push it into a 1 second output of high power. That's what your body was trying to experience.
Okay, so let me ask you this: if generating that much power to try and bend light, hide magnetism, if you're using that much power, or you have to use that much power to generate that type of effect, and this is where we're going to make the transition into what you're doing now, how are you going to do this experiment safely without or what precautions are you taking so that this exact same thing doesn't happen during your experiment?
Oh, exactly. This is where now we have the time, in other words, the prototyping and laboratory safety, in other words, and all the precautions that we could think about. So in other words, put this in an isolated room with proper RF shielding of today. In other words, they have special RF shielding materials where it's just going to be focused and concentrated in a chamber room that actually John Hutchison has in one area of his apartment, kind of a small chamber area, and that's where we could now have instrumentation to do some measurements, but also physically be away. So in other words, we have a complete electrical isolation from the observers or ourselves tinkering or testing than the actual, I call it, the hot source. Now the hot source would be in this case down on a scale model system, of course, of the ship. I mean, we just can't go out and get a ship that's 285 feet long.
Yeah, well, not with that attitude, you can't. Let me ask you, Ron, though, real quick. So, did they end up with the original experiment? Did they end up cloaking the ship? Did it vanish from view as it purported?
It vanished from view as far as visible eyewitnesses, as far as any observation post from the ground. In other words, from the dock. That's one thing. They couldn't get any. They couldn't see the ship on any land-based radar at that moment of time because of that magnetic bubble that they produce. As far as teleportation, that's one thing that we can't really get enough really pinpoint if that was true, because the mist was still there until there was electrical breakdowns and actually systems were shut down. I think depending on with the people going through some real severe hallucinations, maybe they thought they're in that moment of time that they're it's just basically like taking some real hallucinating drugs. Sure. And you think you're some other part of the planet at that moment of time.
How long did the experiment actually last when they flipped the switch to get the power going to this thing? Was it minutes? Was it hour? What was it?
No, it was roughly about 15 minutes was the full duration before they realized they had a tremendous problem to shut it down. So that 15-minute, let's say, of unavailable communications between the shore ground-based people and the vessel-based people, that's where you have that 15 minutes of non-data or this like with this big wow, like wow, what's going on?
Well, we've got about 7 minutes left here. Why don't we talk a little bit more about now? You're setting up to do this experiment. You have some video footage from the experiment that you've been doing, and we'll have a link for that up on our website here. But explain to us and tell us a little bit more. Tim, you had some more questions. I'll let you go back.
Well, actually, Ron, what we're getting into how you're actually going to do this experiment without recreating the same effects. Are you planning on using something much smaller, or what are you planning on using?
Yeah, we're using right now. We tested it with about a 18-inch model that was constructed with kind of conduction properties of iron, like a hull of a ship, on a 18-inch scale. And then what was also introduced was small degaussing coils, which you could basically now they use them in a lot of different electronic systems out there. And we took we wired up the bow with a primary, and we call it the secondary, which is the stern, and then we put made a DC portable DC generator system. In other words, just to liven up these coils. Matter of fact, you could buy a degaussing coil for like about $40 that you plug into the wall, and it looks like a round torus ring. And if you move that around in front of your TV, you could see how you could change the distortion. Now, I'm talking about CRT, in other words, the old traditional cathode ray tube, not the plasma stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of that basic principle, that's what they used to do years ago. They used to degauss the television in the olden days, kind of got something like that, only in a small scale, put it up on the ship, on the model ship, then pumped in some power to create the degaussing effect. And then we created a kind of like a microwave generator system, you'd be amazed of the amount of sophisticated parts out of a microwave oven. Stuff that's like a magnetron, for example, that's used in a microwave oven is what's really used on a lot of radar systems on ships today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that that's how you get that's where the word microwave oven, but that's a microwave transmitting system. So we took that, get that going on, have that wired up and fired up, and of course, that's a very dangerous level because that's really shooting microwaves at high energy. And then we bombard the model from the top sector of the chamber with RF, in other words, real microwave X-band frequency. Matter of fact, John had an X-band transceiver that he had from surplus from the late 40s. That's in operation. And what's interesting, what we did is when we turned that on, now we call it a pretest because we wanted to see just with the two degaussing north and south poles running, magnetron running as it's generating its shielding. In other words, that's the magnetic bubble that the ship was supposed to put out. And then we're coming counterattack with our X-band transceiver or transmitter, the more correct term I'll use, to the model ship. What we noticed was, again, this is small scale, small systems, but enough that it was really creating a major oscillation in the water. In other words, the water, you could see the water in the video. It looked like miniature waves back and forth.
Let's just tell people real quick, Ron, that if people want to see this test, they go to global-communications-network.com, and you can get the pretest results there, and you can actually see this video for yourself.
Yep, and also up on John Hutchison's website also has it, which would be www.hutchisoneffect.ca / should be experiments. I just want to make sure that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, / experiments. And there you'll see the Philadelphia experiment page. Click on that. It's got a lot great details, history, our results of the pre-testing, and also it has some couple really good kind of pictures that we got through some certain sources in the military that show some picture of one of the generators that was on the actual DE-173.
Okay. Now, Ron, we got like maybe 2 minutes left here, so let me ask you this. When you're looking at the video, you mentioned the waves in the water. One of the things you see around the perimeter of the ship is you see something that looks like sparks. What is that the beginning of, or what is that effect that's happening there?
When you see the sparks, that's what's happening. That's where you have two different sources: the onboard source on the ship, in other words, our microwave that we're beaming at it, the X-band thing. It's basically going into a collision. It looks like it's an electrical collision point, and it seems like one is trying to neutralize out the other. And what's happening is we're starting to get some hydrogen breakdown there, and that's where you might see some arcing going back and forth, unpredictable. In other words, it's called a chaos arcing effect at that point, because that's still in salt water, and there was a lot of hydrogen. What's interesting is we didn't get the radical breakdown yet to the green effect, because we're not at that power level yet. But it seems like it's the introduction effect of where the hydrogen is starting to cause this arcing chaos effect around the ship as you're looking at the footage.
Okay, so, and then how much power do you think it would take then to actually make that ship disappear?
I think if we go up to, or we're talking theoretically about 1 kilowatt of applied power, external power bombarding it, and have the generator itself probably sit at 5,000 watts. I think it's possible, because from Hutchison's past experience with some of his jellification experiments, with some of his generators that he used, that's where we concluded that it should work. So he's got enough horsepower that we're going to hook up that it should be able to do it. In other words, getting into that, we call it translucent jellification stage.
So do you think you're going to have this experiment completed within the next year, where you're going to make this ship vanish, Ron?
Oh, absolutely. That's how it goes.
Cool.
We got some interested people in California.
I bet.
That really might start to add some funding to it to really see it as maybe it might turn out to be a show, actually one big show. So
very cool.
We're not really caring about the show, but we just want to care about.
Well, keep us in mind. Yeah, and as you're taking this thing to the next level, please keep in touch with us. Let us know what's going on. Ron, it's been a pleasure having you on the show tonight. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. Love to have you back in the future and talk more about the other experiments as you're working on, okay?
Great.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you very much for tuning into the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. We'll be back again next week with an all-new show. Make sure to tune in and check out our boards at darknessradio.com.